You are summoned before the throne.
This servant obeys, Your Majesty.
Rise and attend to your duty.
Yes, Your Majesty.
When we think of ancient China, what comes to mind? Maybe it's wise emperors, stunning palaces, and those serene, beautiful traditions we see in paintings. These artworks often show elegant women in silk robes, living what looks like a life of luxury inside golden halls. But what if I told you that this picture is far from the whole story? History has a way of tucking the uncomfortable truths away, especially what really happened behind the palace walls. Those women, the concubines, were not living a fairy tale. They weren't free, they weren't equal to the empress, and their lives were anything but safe. Let's pull back the curtain on this gilded cage. The journey for most concubines began when they were just young girls, sometimes as young as 13. They were chosen from families all over the empire, often based on their looks, their family status, or even just pure luck. For many families, having a daughter chosen for the palace was seen as a huge honor, a path to power and wealth. But for the girls themselves, it meant leaving everything they knew behind their homes, their families, their freedom to enter a world they could never leave. Once they stepped through the palace gates, they belonged to the emperor. Their entire existence was dedicated to him. Inside the Forbidden City, life was a strict hierarchy. Think of it like a giant, intricate pyramid. At the very top was the empress, the emperor's one and only official wife. Below her was the empress dowager, the emperor's mother, who often held immense influence. And then, in descending order of rank, came the concubines. There were different levels. Imperial noble consorts, consorts, and so on, all the way down to the lowest-ranking attendants. Your rank determined everything: the quality of your food, the fabric of your clothes, the size of your living quarters, and even how many servants you had. Moving up the ladder was the ultimate goal, but it was incredibly difficult. The only sure way to improve your status was to win the emperor's favor and, most importantly, to give birth to a son. This created a fiercely competitive and dangerous environment. The palace wasn't a sisterhood. It was a battlefield. The women were all rivals, constantly plotting to catch the emperor's attention. A little gossip here, a strategically lost piece of jewelry, their sabotage, was common. More sinister plots were always rumored to be unfolding in the shadows. Accusations of witchcraft, poisoning, or trying to harm another concubine's unborn child were serious and could lead to brutal punishments, including being demoted, confined to a solitary cold palace, or even executed. It was a life of constant anxiety, where a single misstep could mean ruin. You had to be smart, cunning, and always on guard. And what about the emperor's love? We imagine great romances, but the reality was often very different. The emperor had hundreds, sometimes thousands, of women at his disposal. A concubine might go months, or even years, without ever seeing him. Many would live and die within the palace walls, having never even spoken to the man they were bound to. Their lives were spent in waiting for a visit that might never come. This loneliness and lack of purpose could be They were surrounded by luxury, yet trapped in profound isolation. So, the next time you see a beautiful painting of palace life, remember the hidden stories. Remember the young women who gave up their freedom for a life that was less of a dream and more of a gamble. A life of silent struggle behind the shimmering facade of the imperial court. Ever wondered what it was really like to live inside the Forbidden City? Not as an empress, but as one of the thousands of concubines. It's a world often glamorized in movies and dramas, full of beautiful gowns and intricate power plays. But the reality for these women was far more complex, and often much darker. Let us peel back the layers of silk and jade to uncover the true story of the women who lived and died within the palace walls. First, how did a woman become a concubine? You might imagine a grand, romantic selection process, but it was often a strategic, political, and sometimes brutal affair. Many girls were chosen from noble families, sent to the palace as pawns in their family's quest for power and influence. A daughter close to the emperor meant favor, titles, and wealth for her entire clan. For these women, it wasn't a choice. It was a duty. They were raised from birth for this single purpose: to catch the Emperor Si, and secure their family's future. But it wasn't just the daughters of dukes and generals. The palace also held massive-scale selections, where thousands of young women from common households were brought in for inspection. Imagine lines of hopeful and terrified young girls being judged on their appearance, their posture, their voice, and even the smallest details of their family background. It was less like a beauty pageant and more like a human marketplace. For a poor family, having a daughter chosen could mean a lifetime of financial security. But for the girl herself, it was a one-way ticket to a life she never asked for. Because here's the most brutal truth. Once a woman entered those towering palace gates, she was no longer a person. She became the property of the palace, and by extension, the emperor. The moment she was selected, her old life was over. She was immediately cut off from her family. She couldn't write letters, she couldn't receive visitors, and she could never, ever go home again. Her name was struck from her family's records, and a new, palace-given name took its place. She belonged to the Forbidden City now, for better or for worse. Usually, it was for worse. Life inside was a constant, suffocating competition. There was one emperor, and thousands of women vying for his attention. A single night with the emperor could elevate a woman's status, granting her better living quarters, finer clothes, and more servants. But this favor was fleeting. The emperor had countless distractions, and a woman could be forgotten as quickly as she was chosen. This constant pressure created a toxic environment of jealousy, suspicion, and betrayal. The sisterhood you see in dramas was often a facade, hiding vicious rivalries where women would do anything to climb the ladder, or to make another woman fall. And what happened if you never caught the emperor's eye, or if you fell out of favor? Many concubines lived their entire lives in lonely, quiet desperation. They would grow old in their secluded courtyards, having seen the emperor only a handful of times, or perhaps not at all. There were ghosts in a golden cage, surrounded by luxury, but starved of love, freedom, and human connection. Their youth and beauty faded, and they were left with nothing but memories of a family they could never see again. They entered as vibrant young women and ended as lonely souls, buried in unmarked graves within the palace grounds. So, the next time you see a drama about the Imperial harem, remember the real women behind the fiction. Remember the girls torn from their families, the intense pressure, the crushing loneliness, and the complete loss of self. Their story is not just one of opulence and romance, but a haunting tale of sacrifice, survival, and the staggering human cost of absolute power. Thanks for watching and joining me on this journey back. We often hear the phrase, 3,000 beauties in the Imperial harem. And while that number might be an exaggeration, the reality wasn't far off for some rulers. So, what was the real reason behind this massive system? Was it just about luxury and indulgence? First and foremost, it was all about securing the future of the dynasty. In ancient China, the emperor was seen as the son of heaven, and his primary duty was to ensure his bloodline continued. A stable empire needed a clear line of succession. Without a healthy, capable male heir, the entire court could descend into chaos, with relatives and powerful officials fighting for the throne. This could lead to civil war and the collapse of the dynasty. So, the more sons an emperor had, the higher the chances of having a suitable successor. The concubine system was essentially a reproductive strategy on a grand scale. The selection of concubines was a deeply political affair. Many women in the harem came from powerful and influential families across the empire. By marrying a daughter from a prominent clan, the emperor formed a strong political alliance. This was a way to keep powerful generals, governors, and ministers loyal to the throne. If their daughter gave birth to a prince who eventually became the new emperor, their family's power and influence would be secured for generations. So, the harem was like a political chessboard. Then there's the element of status and power. In a world where might made right, having a large and magnificent harem was the ultimate symbol of an emperor's greatness. It was a visible display of his wealth, influence, and virility. Just like owning vast lands or having a massive army, a sprawling harem demonstrated that the emperor was powerful enough to command and provide for thousands. It sent a clear message to both his subjects and rival states. This is a ruler at the peak of his power, a true son of heaven whose mandate is unquestionable. The sheer scale of the harem was meant to inspire awe and reinforce. Life for these women, however, was far from a fairy tale. They lived in a highly competitive and often lonely environment, confined within the palace walls. Their entire existence revolved around gaining the emperor's favor. The hierarchy was strict, with the empress at the top, followed by various ranks of consorts and concubines. Giving birth to a son, especially the crown prince, was the surest way to rise through the ranks and secure one's position. This created intense rivalries and palace intrigues that have become legendary in Chinese history and drama. So, the next time you hear about the thousands of women in the Forbidden City, remember it was less about romance and more about a complex system of politics, power, and dynastic survival. It was a calculated strategy to produce heirs, build alliances, and project an image of absolute authority. It's a fascinating, and sometimes tragic, glimpse into the heart of. Imagine living in the most beautiful place on earth, a palace shimmering with gold and jade, gardens bursting with fragrant blossoms, and silks of every color imaginable at your fingertips. Sounds like a dream, right? But what if I told you that for the women who lived there, this paradise was also a gilded cage? Today, let's pull back the curtain on the real lives of palace concubines. It wasn't all poetry and moon-gazing. It was a life of breathtaking beauty and crushing rules. The first thing you have to understand is that the palace was a world unto itself, and for the concubines, it was their entire world. Once a woman entered those towering gates, she rarely, if ever, left. Her family, her old friends, her entire past life was cut off. The palace walls weren't just for keeping intruders out. They were for keeping the emperor's women in. They were beautiful, prized possessions, but possessions nonetheless. Every gate had guards. Every corridor had watchful eyes. Freedom was the price of entry. Now, let's talk about their daily routine. Forget sleeping in or spontaneous plans. A concubine's day was scheduled down to the minute, dictated by ancient rites and strict protocol. They would wake before dawn to begin the long process of dressing and makeup. This wasn't just about looking pretty. It was a demonstration of rank and status. The type of hairpin, the embroidery on their robes, the number of pearls, everything was a symbol, a message to everyone else about their place in the hierarchy. After this, they would pay respects to the empress or the empress dowager, a daily ritual filled with subtle power plays and veiled insults. The rest of the day was a structured mix of activities. They'd practice skills meant to please the emperor, things like painting, calligraphy, music, or embroidery. These weren't just hobbies. They were tools for survival. The better you were, the more likely you were to catch the emperor's attention. And attention was everything. It meant better food, finer clothes, more respect from the servants, and most importantly, a chance to secure your future and the future of your family. The competition was relentless because the stakes were so high. But what about the nights? This is where the true nature of their existence becomes crystal clear. A concubine couldn't just decide to visit the emperor. The emperor would choose who he wanted to spend the night with, from a set of nameplates presented by his eunuch. If your plate was chosen, it was a moment of triumph. You'd be bathed, perfumed, and wrapped in a quilt to be carried to the emperor's chambers. It sounds strange, but this was to ensure she carried no weapons. Even in the most intimate moments, suspicion and control were always present, and they were never truly alone. Servants, especially eunuchs and ladies-in-waiting, were a constant presence. They were your helpers, but they were also spies for the empress or other powerful figures. Every word you said, every letter you wrote, every person you met with was noted and reported. Trust was a rare and dangerous commodity. A friendly conversation could be a trap. A seemingly kind servant could be your worst enemy. It was a life of constant vigilance, where a single misstep could lead to punishment, demotion, or being cast aside and forgotten in a remote, lonely courtyard for the rest of your days. So while we marvel at the dazzling costumes and epic romances in historical dramas, it's crucial to remember the reality behind the fantasy. The palace was a stunningly beautiful prison. For the thousands of women who lived within its walls, it was a life of luxury and loneliness, of fierce competition and quiet desperation. They were players in a high-stakes game they never asked to join, where the ultimate prize was survival. Imagine living in a world of breathtaking luxury, draped in silks and jewels, with every desire seemingly at your fingertips. No, imagine this world is also a gilded cage, where your survival depends on the affection of a single, powerful man. This was the reality for concubines in ancient imperial courts. Well, it might sound like a fairy tale. The truth was far more terrifying. This wasn't a story of romance. It was a Game of Thrones where the prize was survival, and the weapon of choice was jealousy. In the sprawling, opalescent palaces, hundreds, sometimes thousands, of women vied for the emperor's attention. Each glance, each visit, each gift from him was a mark of status and security. But his favor was a flickering candle in the wind, and when it shifted, the darkness that followed was deadly. The greatest fear wasn't loneliness. It was the woman standing next to you. Your supposed sister in this strange, isolated world was also your most dangerous rival. The most common tactic was accusation. A well-placed rumor, a whispered lie in the right ear, could be a death sentence. The rival could accuse you of anything: theft, disrespect, or even worse, witchcraft. Imagine being accused of using black magic to harm the emperor or his children, with no evidence needed beyond the accuser's word and the emperor's paranoia. Your fate was sealed. The fear was constant. You had to watch every word you said, every person you spoke to, because anyone could be a spy, gathering information to use against you. A simple herbal remedy for a headache could be twisted into a story of you brewing a potent poison. Then there was the terrifying prospect of losing favor. One day you could be the emperor's beloved, showered with affection and gifts. The next, he might not even remember your name. This wasn't just a blow to your pride. It was a threat to your very existence. Once you were forgotten, you lost your protection. Other concubines, palace eunuchs, and even servants who once bowed to you could now scorn and abuse you with impunity. Your resources would be cut off, your luxurious lifestyle would vanish, and you could be moved to a remote, desolate corner of the palace, left to live out your days in solitude and despair. This slow social death was, for many, a fate worse than a quick execution. Perhaps the most insidious danger was being used as a scapegoat. When things went wrong in the palace, a military loss, a failed harvest, a strange illness plaguing the royal family, someone had to be blamed. And who better to blame than a woman with no political power, whose only value was tied to the emperor's whim? A court official with a grudge, or a rival concubine seeing an opportunity, could a silly point a finger. Suddenly, you were the source of all the empire's problems, a bad omen whose presence cursed the palace. In these moments of collective panic and superstition, logic vanished, and you became the sacrifice to restore order and peace of mind. The stories of these women are often lost to history, overshadowed by the grand tales of emperors and battles. But their struggles were just as intense, their lives just as dramatic. They navigated a treacherous world of beauty and betrayal, where a smile could hide a dagger and a compliment could be a veiled threat. It's a chilling reminder that in the quest for power and survival, the most beautiful rose up. Have you ever wondered what it was really like to be a concubine in ancient China's Forbidden City? It's a world often glamorized in movies and TV shows, but the reality was far more complex and, frankly, quite terrifying. Let's peel back the layers of silk and secrets to uncover the truth. Imagine a city within a city, a labyrinth of opulent palaces and secluded gardens, all ruled by one man, the emperor. His power wasn't just political, it was absolute, extending to every single person within those crimson walls, especially the thousands of women who made up his harem. Their entire existence revolved around him. He was the sun, and they were the planets, their orbits dictated by his whims. So, how did this system of control actually work? It started with their living quarters. The Forbidden City was meticulously organized. The Empress, the one and only official wife, resided in her own grand palace, a symbol of her supreme status. But, for the concubines, it was a different story. Their rank determined their residence. High-ranking consorts might enjoy spacious, beautifully decorated courtyards, complete with their own staff of servants and eunuchs. They had privacy, luxury, and a taste of prestige. But as you went down the ladder, the conditions changed dramatically. Lower-ranking concubines were often housed together in less desirable, smaller quarters. Think of it like a tiered dormitory system, where your social standing was literally written on the walls of your home. A promotion in rank didn't just mean more favor from the emperor. It meant a physical move to a better part of the palace. This constant visual reminder of the hierarchy fueled intense competition. Every woman knew exactly where she stood, and where everyone else stood, just by knowing which gate they walked through at the end of the day. Now, let us talk about the most crucial aspect of a concubine's life: being summoned by the Emperor. This wasn't a casual invitation. It was a highly ritualized process, managed with bureaucratic precision by the court unit. They kept detailed records, known as the green-headed tablets. Each night, the names of eligible concubines were written on these tablets and presented to the Emperor after his dinner. If he was interested, he would flip over the tablet of his chosen companion for the night. Once the choice was made, a whole series of events was set in motion. The selected woman would be bathed, perfumed, and meticulously prepared by eunuchs. Then came one of the most famous and, honestly, dehumanizing parts of the ritual. She would be wrapped tightly in a blanket, leaving her completely vulnerable, and carried on the back of a eunuch to the Emperor's bedchamber. This was done for security reasons, to ensure no weapons could be hidden. After the encounter, eunuchs would record the exact date and time, a crucial detail if a pregnancy resulted. The Emperor's favor was fleeting, and this nightly lottery was a woman's only chance to secure her future. The Emperor's control didn't stop there. He was also the ultimate judge and jury. Rewards and punishments were handed out based on his personal feelings. Did a concubine please him with a poem, a song, or a clever conversation? She might be showered with priceless gifts, rare silks, exquisite jewelry, or promotions in rank that would elevate her and her entire family. These rewards were public displays, designed to show everyone who was currently in favor. But his displeasure was just as powerful and far more terrifying. A minor misstep, a careless word, or simply falling out of favor could lead to severe consequences. A concubine could be demoted, stripped of her privileges, and moved to a desolate part of the palace. In more serious cases, she might be confined to the infamous Cold Palace. This wasn't a specific building, but rather any neglected, remote courtyard where disgraced concubines were sent to live out their days in isolation and misery. It was a sentence of social and emotional death. The ultimate punishment, of course, could be execution, a stark reminder that their lives were not their own. Ultimately, a single word from the Emperor could create or destroy a woman's world. A smile could mean a lifetime of luxury for her and honor for her family. A frown could mean solitude, despair, or worse. The immense pressure to constantly please, to stand out among thousands, and to navigate the treacherous politics of the harem created an environment of perpetual anxiety. It was a golden cage, where the sparkle of wealth and status couldn't hide the cold, hard reality of absolute control. So the next time you see a drama about the Imperial harem, remember the real system behind the spectacle. It was a world of profound uncertainty, where a woman's entire destiny was held in the hands of one man. Thanks for watching. If you found this glimpse into the Forbidden City fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from history. See you next time.